first time, maybe even second time. Still we go on. Juric has dribbled his way clear. Chance! Goal! For Australia! James Troisi! Can that win the Asian
Cup? James Troisi, how's it going, man?
Good, mate. Good. Thank you for having me, mate.
No, pleasure's mine, bro. What's been happening in your world? You just got back from Sydney, huh?
Yeah, just got back from Sydney. Couple games, couple A-League games, which we haven't had yet. So yeah, just getting ready for the season to finally start. To be honest, obviously, it's been pretty hectic with everything that's been going on. Obviously. You know, the struggles in the league and COVID and just, I think it's just good to finally have a start date and just kick it off.
How are you going now? Because Adelaide, and probably thanks to the great man Bruce Shitte, is a very youthful team. And you must feel weird being like the experienced guy because you've always been kind of the youthful, or, you know, the number 10, the star player. And now you're probably the experienced head in the dressing room. I mean, what's pre-season been like for you this year with a lot of, I guess, younger boys around you? Have you been enjoying that? Has it been harder?
Yeah, I guess it's a strange feeling because obviously I'm still, you know, the number 10 and that, you know, higher profile player and you know, everyone, I guess, looks at me and in terms of, you know, the game changer kind of, you know, position I play in. But, you know, as you get a little bit older, yeah, things change and you do, people expect obviously different things from you and you kind of see the game, see the world, see kids, you know, completely different. So, yeah, it has been interesting. Obviously, like I said, with all the things that have been going on, there's been a massive influx of youth. And younger players. But you know, it's been enjoyable. It's been tough. It's been interesting, eye-opening for myself as well. You know, the way I guess the way you and I were brought up, and then you know the ones kind of before us, completely different to the youngsters now. And
I guess I know, right?
What they can get away with, man. To be honest.
What are some of the pet peeves for you coming from your generation? Like, I assume it's got to be around social media or mobile phones, or what is it for you? Something separate?
Like I said, I'm pretty bad with tech and stuff like that, but it's like these TikToks and stuff, you know what I mean?
Oh no, TikToks are making it to the change room.
Everyone's sitting there doing this one in the change room. I'm thinking, mate, what are you doing? It's just,
no.
So it's just, I think everyone, you know, watches Odell Beckham and stuff like that too much, and it's just, everyone's dancing and having fun, and like, you know what, you need to have a bit of that, but yeah, it's pretty fun. Like social media is a game changer, you know what I mean? So it's changed football, sport, the world really we live in now, which you know, it can be extremely good and beneficial, but on the flip side, it can be pretty grim as well, mate. So it's an interesting era we're living in at the moment with, like I said, with everything that's going on, you know, COVID, social media.
It's crazy, huh?
Football in general. So
is this period been like the most unique period in your career, in a sense, because of like the stop and start of the season and maybe the dressing room and how times are changing, or is this your experience? You've just been able to kind of shift through it and keep your professionalism.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow my career, mate, I've been in some
well, I can't wait to get into it. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, some unique situations, but you know what? I guess COVID's just like chucked everything out of the ordinary. It's just crazy. Obviously, it's affected just everyone in so many different ways. But in terms of football, mate, it's the same for me. It's just knuckle down, work hard, do your job. I guess the lifestyle I kind of live, I'm very healthy, keep myself fit. that, in terms of a stoppage of a season, or extended kind of off season or break, doesn't really affect me too much. Obviously, we want to play. We like to play as many games as we can.
Yep.
But in terms of the way I live and the lifestyle, it's all right for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, man, I'm keen to get into, because I thought I knew a lot about you, like even your career and stuff. But obviously, coming into this, I just did a bit more research to touch up on that, and I'm like, holy shit, there's more to you than I know, and some real quirky situations I want to get into. But obviously, for those that know James Troisi, he's got an incredible footballing pedigree and career to speak to. And obviously, we've been fortunate in Australia to see you play in the A-League for a good part of your career now, and you've obviously had some really successful stints. I mean, what you did at Melbourne Victory, and I guess what you're giving to Adelaide now is, you're a very talented and creative player, as everyone knows, but it's just been, great to watch a superstar in their peak playing the A-League, because we're kind of, we sometimes miss that a little bit now because everyone's going overseas and stuff. So I do want to get into your career and I guess the crux of, what made you come back and all that sort of stuff. But more recently, just I guess a bit more to your personal life, you're like a father now. So with fatherhood, I'm actually curious to know, does that change anything when you're playing the game? I know it may sound a bit stupid, but we've had a few guests on before and they're like, it sometimes has made the game mean more because there's more of a legacy attached to it when kids come into life, or alternatively, it's created more balance and been able to separate football from, family life has been able to separate your football more.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good one. I think for me more so, it's created more balance. I think 100%. It's just changed the perspective of everything.
Yeah.
And I thought it would, but didn't realize how much it would.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you have a hard day at work. You come home now, see the little one, give him a hug, give him a kiss.
Yeah.
Play with him. You just switch
Forget
off,
everything.
and I think that's a good thing. You need that. You need to switch off. You can't just be 24/7 football. What went wrong? What can go wrong? What's happening next?
Yeah.
So, I guess it's hard because my little one doesn't stop. He's a maniac. He's running around and causing chaos.
Gets it
But
from you.
yeah, you know what? It's a good kind of distraction to have. So yeah, I mean, life changes all the time
Yeah,
and
man.
pretty quickly, and it's fantastic, mate. It's what we wanted, and very 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 lucky and thankful, and obviously looking for the future and try and have another one soon, I reckon.
Yeah, the future Troisi is going to be bouncing
Yeah,
around,
that's
mate. I
it.
can't wait to
That's it.
see which one's going to
Yeah,
be in a Socceroo or in
yeah,
the
I know.
the
We'll see
Matildas
how
for
we
that
go.
matter. But
That's it.
so back in Adelaide now. So you're an Adelaide boy. Played most of your junior career, and obviously you have family in South Australia. Is it feel like a bit of a homecoming for you being back there? Was this kind of always planned, or has it just kind of naturally happened that way?
Um, it's just naturally happened that way, to be honest. Like I left when I was 15. The A League hadn't started yet.
Mm,
Obviously, I played local leagues. So there was never really that connection with Adelaide United. Didn't exist.
yeah,
Then I was overseas for a long time, and then it was Ange Postecoglou who brought me back to Victory.
yeah,
So that was kind of my first ever connection with an
taste,
A-League club,
yeah,
So it was like, obviously it was Victory, so it didn't go down too well because obviously everyone's like, oh, why didn't you come back to Adelaide? Why didn't you come back to Adelaide? But no one ever approached me
yeah,
at
yeah,
Adelaide, so there
yeah,
was never that connection there. So obviously, fast forwarding, I ended up leaving Victory. Um, there was interest with Adelaide, and obviously, my relationship with Bruce.
yeah,
So it kind of all fell into place a little bit. He got the job. I was out of contract, and I'm here today playing back home, which it is a fantastic feeling, being back home
yeah,
playing. You know, I've played overseas for, I don't know, I think it's 12, 13 years. And, your family come over every now and then, but it's the ones like, your grandparents, your close family, your cousins, and your close mates, which generally don't get to see you play. You can watch from a TV. It's completely different. So just being back and just having my family being able to come to the game, watch me.
Does that feel weird for you a little bit? Like they're so accessible?
Yeah, it is. It's really strange, obviously, coming back with the Socceroos, played Adelaide a couple of times. But every time kind of we were back, whether it was Sydney or Melbourne, whatever state, they would make a trip over, the 10, 15 of them. But now obviously, it's everyone. So, my family's reasonably big. So yeah, it is a strange feeling. But in saying that, mate, I've always gone about my business the same way. You know what I mean? I think you have to. You can't get caught up in all the other stuff that goes on. You just need to step on the pitch and
100%.
do your thing.
And you are a great example of the athletes that we talk about a lot, of like the sacrifice that comes with football being first and actually moving out of home at a young age to try and achieve your goals and dreams, and then that dream being achieved but keeping you out of home for 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. And even though that's exactly where you want to be, it obviously has its challenges because you're away from family and friends and maybe the environment you grew up in. And I want to touch on this because I want to get Newcastle United, pretty unique place to end up, and it was a massive club still to this day. But when you were there, obviously coming through the ranks and then getting a first team contract at a time where like the names that Newcastle had was massive.
Yeah.
So
Michael
how
Owen,
did you?
Michael Owen rocking up to training in his chopper.
Yeah. You're kidding.
Yeah, legit.
What, he
legit.
just turned that on a regular basis?
I think he had one, but definitely when he signed first, because he came from Real Madrid, mate.
Yeah,
so
I know.
he was rocking up in his chopper. So
that was a bit of a everyone was like, what? He's gone from Real Madrid to Newcastle.
Yeah, but they were paying big bucks back then, mate. Newcastle were paying. I think it was like you said. If you look at the names that they had back then, I think it was something like the third highest wage bill in the Premier League.
Yeah,
because
insane. There was Michael Owen, Damien Duff, Charles Nzogbia, Obafemi Martins.
Yeah,
it was
Nicky Bart, Kieran Dyer, Lee Bowyer was there, Shay Given, Stephen Harper, Stevie Taylor.
Steve Taylor, yeah.
I was real close with Emre Benazoglu, Turkish international.
Yeah.
He's still playing now.
He was the captain of Turkey.
He came from the captain of Turkey. Came from Inter Milan. He's still playing actually.
Is he play? Yeah, he is too. You're right.
He's still playing. I think he's back at Ferno now actually.
Yeah, I was going to say I think he is.
Mate, it was unreal.
How did that come about? Like, how did you go from playing football in South Australia to Newcastle?
Yeah, I guess not that I was lucky. I was a little bit lucky because, like I said, there was no A-League there. And I felt that, there was no next step. So it was like I was 14, 13, playing under 23s. Too young to play first team, playing against 23s is pretty much grown men anyway. But first team was first team, and it was like, what do I do now? So, but it started before that. My old man had an academy. Well, we started up an academy. He pretty much said to me one night, he said, if you wake me up at 6 o'clock in the morning, then I'll train you. I'll coach you. So he thought it wasn't gonna happen. Next morning, 6 o'clock, wake him up. Let's go to training. And it pretty much didn't stop, for basically forever really, but until I left and went to Newcastle. So like I said, there was nothing really there for that next step. So he started up an academy. So the academy ran for about probably 3 years, and it was good. Like he Dad's an accountant by trade, but he played football, not at a high level. But he loved the game, and he based kind of his coaching skills or tactics or beliefs off like Ajax and the way they kind of did things, and it was heavily based on that. And so we used to train, mate. We wake up in the morning,
Every day.
5:30, 6 o'clock every day. Go to
Wow.
training, go to school, come home, eat, training at night. And it mixed it up. Like, we had a close mate of my father's that he grew up with, and obviously a very close mate of mine now because he's, had a big influence in my career. He
Mm.
was, we did like mixed martial arts, we did boxing, he was a professional boxer. So we did, we saw, strength and conditioning coaches, psychologists, nutritionists. Like it was full on. It was really, really good. And long story short, we went over there probably a year and a half before that, just to get a gist of what
What's
the
out there, right?
reality is really like, what's out there. And then and we were good. Like it was good. It was a good eye opener.
Was this
But
at
then
Newcastle or just overseas to experience
overseas,
club
just
overseas?
overseas to experience it.
Yeah.
But the second time we did the same thing, and we went with a team, and then we were playing. So we played Newcastle, we played Chelsea, we went over to Holland, we played Ajax, we
Epic.
played some lower league clubs like Walsall, um, and basically from there, Newcastle pretty much liked me, and that's how it happened. So,
Wow.
the rest is kind of history. So I went there on a like a scholarship, and then
Okay.
obviously worked my way up and got my pro contract, and I was pretty much with the first team at the end.
Man, when you say scholarship for the listeners, that's you were living like on in the academy or
So I was lucky. My parents actually moved over because they had to.
because it's
Even
okay.
till today, you can't move over unless you're. I'm still think
Certain
it's
age.
a certain age. I think it's 17, might be
Yep.
17 or something like that, for the sole
Yep.
purpose of playing. So they came over with me because at that time, basically, Dad was my coach, then he was my manager. Obviously, the academy kind of stopped from there. There was a few other boys that there was interest around as well.
Okay.
Um, so they came over, so I was lucky. So um, for that, for that chunk of time as well, I had my family there supporting me, which obviously makes a world of differences as well.
Yeah. So just to go with that, because I do want to go into a bit of what the Newcastle experience was like, because around that time I feel like Goal came out, so everyone had this view of like what
Yeah,
Newcastle was
yeah,
like. But
yeah,
just to go back to, because I think that's pretty amazing, the training you were doing with your dad, and probably great for all the young listeners and aspiring soccer players to understand actually the dedication required. Because I've always loved watching you play because one, I just like watching left footers play. They always look better.
yeah, yeah,
Just for whatever reason, they just look more clean. And I understand having like my biggest asset when I played was always my technical ability. And I know how hard, like you can be gifted as much as you want, but how hard you actually have to work to be
yeah.
technically gifted and be able to, have the football brains and spatial awareness and stuff. But you have like on another level, like your creativity and your technical abilities, what make you stand out. And in some ways, you're like you make the game whenever you get the ball, it seems slow. Like you know what I mean. You have that effect, which is awesome. But
Thank
do you
you.
put that down to like some of your work with your dad, like drilling you when you say the IX philosophy, or where did your technical abilities come from?
Yeah, it's hard work. Like obviously have something. I guess I've always been lucky that I have that physical ability or attributes, even to today. I
Mm.
don't know if you saw, like, I'm, you know, I'm the fittest in the team. Carl Viet came out and said that a couple of weeks ago,
I
and
saw that.
yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like I've had to work my ass off, but still, I've been given that. You know what I mean? I can run, and that's what people, I guess, probably don't really understand about me. And unless you're having a pre-season with me or working with me 1v1 and doing the numbers and stuff like that, you wouldn't know because you just see my
The
my
games, the Saturdays,
the game, or my left foot or my flariness or something like that. But
100%.
and what you don't see in the game as well is, mate, I'm probably running the most in my team as well. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Although I make it look easy and it slows down. So I guess I've always had that. Um, in terms of all the other stuff, yeah, I think I think someone like this sounds cliche, but a Maradona and a Messi, they've been given this unbelievable talent.
Some just have it.
That some just have it. I don't think I have that. I obviously have, I have some quality. I have the ability. I've got a good left foot. My right foot's pretty good.
Yeah,
I've had to work
which
for
is
all
rare
these
for a
things.
left footer.
Yeah, which is rare, but it's not like that wasn't given to me. I had to work for that. So it was more like, okay, I'm a lefty. I'll have 50 shots on my right and 10 shots on my left. You know what I mean? So it was one of those. So, it's always been hard work. I've always had to work for it. In terms of the things we did with my dad, obviously we worked on a lot of stuff, and it's just like, mate, your best mate is a ball and a wall. You know what I mean? Just kicking up, back and forth, juggling, all that kind of stuff. In terms of what I think the biggest thing what my father offered, and what his name is Vince Palumbo. He was, like I said, he does stick fighting, he did boxing, did mixed martial arts, did everything.
Yep.
It was more so the discipline, the respect, the conditioning, all this kind of stuff. Like, we used to get absolutely smashed. I'm talking like we used to have to like half squat. We'd have a pad on our legs, and he used to kick us. We used to have to lie on our back, lift our stomachs up, and our mates would like sit there and slap us till we're purple. And it was brutal, but in the end, mate, we were enjoying it. We're working hard. We're getting disciplined, because then if someone on the pitch slaps you, I'm like, yeah, good on you. I've been slapped hard.
Nothing.
I've been slapped. It's nothing. So things like that were priceless, and still to today, outside of football and general life as well. It's helped me, and like I said, even just that respect kind of thing, which we were touching on before, in terms of what you see in younger kids today. Not really there, you know what I mean? I don't feel it's there. Obviously, everyone's different. I'm not saying the whole, but those kind of things there, that discipline, that work rate, that work ethic, is not quite there. And this is obviously off topic completely as well, but it's like, how much do you want it? Why do you need it, or why do you want it? My whole family moved over for me, so if I wasn't successful, what was going to happen? Mate, we were living in the UK. I was on a scholarship, right? So I was getting, mate, £100, £100, £200 a week, nothing. Even when I signed a pro contract, I was on like £1,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm on £100 or £200 a week. We've moved all the way over to Newcastle. The British pound was ridiculous to the Australian dollar.
Yeah.
Literally, we came a couple of weeks off losing our house in Australia.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So that was, and you know what? My parents were good like that. I didn't understand it, I guess. Like, I knew there was pressure and stuff like that, but they did a really good job of kind of hiding and stuff like that. Looking back now, I'm thinking, shit, man, if it didn't go well, but I guess, subconsciously as well, it's like, what, this has got to happen. I've got to do this, and you look at like all over the world where, Brazilians, South Americans, Africans, that's all they have. If they're not a footballer, they're done. You know what I mean? They're on the streets. So, and this is what people have to understand. This is what young Australian kids are dealing with. Life's so easy here.
Yeah, man.
We have everything. You can choose 7 sports. Life's beautiful. And we'll touch on that a bit later. But for me, it's like all the sacrifice, like you were talking about sacrifice and stuff like that. And I've always loved Australia as well. So every time I've been overseas, the whole time, for 12 years, I love Australia. I miss it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, I love it that much. So there's obviously a lot to it.
Man, that's a powerful story, and I love how you say, because I'm a big believer in, like, in anything in life, but when you're doing something, like, what's the why? Like, because that can dictate the outcome and the effort and attention, and doesn't mean it's always going to go to plan, but usually if you've got a big why, and particularly your why in that situation is just so much, almost like it's your career and your decision, and ultimately it's down to you, but it's so much bigger than you in a sense, because you've got all the people you love, sacrificing for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, all the way through. I guess it's might be a little bit different now, but for me, all the way through school, or speaking to anyone, oh yeah, but what happens if you break your leg? What happens if it doesn't happen? What's what's next? And it was, for me, it was like, well, no, there isn't. That's it. You know what I mean? So
That's crazy.
and if it wasn't it, and if I didn't become a footballer, I'm sure I would have been fine, because I guess I have that work ethic.
100%,
so
dude.
whatever it was, if it's putting out bins, then I'll be the best. I'll do the best at that. Or if it's building or whatever, I got that work ethic. So I think I'll be relatively successful in whatever I do, because whatever I put my mind to, I want to achieve it and do the best I can with it. But yeah, for me, it was just I used to get it all the time. But what?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, there's no buts. It's just, that's it. I want to be a footballer.
It's almost like when people sense you're so driven to something and you're so dedicated and focused, they try and draw you away from, like, well, what if something goes wrong? What are you going to fall back on? And it's hard, because I always talk about this as, like, particularly now as I've come out of it, I'm like, you can definitely be not multitasking, but you can definitely have other interests outside of football that can stand you in good stead, and you can still be, like, effective on the pitch. But in saying that, Archie put it so well when he was on. He's like, there's almost a certain mentality you have to have in the industry to get the most out of it. Like, you do have to be cutthroat. You do have to be tunnel visioned. And I kind of, like, as much as I preach, having a balanced lifestyle is probably going to help sport, and it's going to, there's a longer part outside of your career that you have to live. Like, I love the fact that you didn't give yourself an option. You were going to make it.
Yeah, it's funny, because now you speak to me, I'm probably completely different. I'm like you. I said there's definitely more to football, or more to sport, and you need other things. But at that time in my life,
I was the
that
same, bro.
age, I didn't know
was the
any
same.
different, mate. I didn't think about anything. Going to uni. I didn't like school. I wasn't good at it.
Yeah.
I'm not an idiot, but I just didn't like it. I'm not an academic.
Yeah.
I'm street smart, or because of the places I've been, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not an academic. I couldn't sit behind a computer, or a book, or anything like that. It wasn't me. I guess as things started to progress, and pretty much as soon as I started making money, I invested in property and stuff like that. So that was kind of my, okay, what if football's not working? But I guess I had to get to that stage first to be able to do that. You know what I mean? So, and now, like I said, I do that. And that's kind of I'm in the position now that if I had to stop tomorrow, well, I've got stuff outside of football that I'll be fine.
Going.
You know what I mean? And keep me going. And so.
But I love that, like, some of the fundamental disciplines you talk about with the training with your dad's friend, was his name Frank?
Yeah, Vince, yeah.
Vince, sorry. Vince, and also the stuff you're doing with your dad. But it 100%, this is what I learned coming out of the game, even though I came out young and, like, fell short of what I wanted to do. I always speak about it. I'm like, if you can channel it into something else, like, what you've got out of football is so much more than just the ball. Like, the disciplines, like the life. I mean, who in the world at 32 can say they've lived overseas for 12 years playing sport? 1%, not even 1% of, so it's such a small minority. That's why I think you'll be successful in anything. But I do want to speak about the time in Newcastle, because it's a bit of a daunting period for you, because I want to get into some of your professional career, because there's a lot that you have achieved, which is something I want to talk about. But the time at Newcastle, you signed your first professional contract in 2007. How did you find that period for you, living overseas, signing your first pro contract in a team of names we've mentioned before in the English Premier League? They were also, I think, in the Europa or the UEFA Cup at the time.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I guess it goes kind of before I signed my professional contract because ultimately, I just opened the door. Scholarship. I've opened the door. I've come into a place where I left in January. It was summer, 40 degrees. I went to
Yeah.
Newcastle. I had Birkenstocks on. Idiot. Mate, it was snowing, grey.
Oh
Gets
no.
light. It gets light maybe 10:30 in the day, and it's dark at 3. It's
Oh,
like insane.
depressing.
And then like this is what I'm saying about mentality. Then here I am, an Aussie kid, coming into an environment that I didn't expect. You got these beast of kids, you know, um, thinking, who's this young Aussie kid? Aussies
Mm,
can't play football. I'm
yeah.
just going to kick the shit out of him. Doesn't matter if he's in my team or not. He's
Yeah.
not taking my spot. You know what I mean?
100%.
So it was crazy, mate. Like I said, it is dog eat dog. It's um, because and I think it's harder at that age because everyone wants that first team contract. That is the goal. Everyone wants to be a pro. Everyone wants that first team contract. Because I found as well in the UK, which was really really strange. Not like Aussies, we go everywhere. And I had mates, good players. If they weren't successful at Newcastle, that's it. They're done. They stop.
Wow.
You know, they may go to like a lower league in Newcastle.
Yeah.
They're not going to London. They're not going to Middlesbrough. They're not going to. They don't move. I found it really fascinating. So it's like, you know what, we've got to make it here. We're not letting anyone take our spots. Because like you said, otherwise they just stop. So that environment was really, really crazy, and to be honest, the quality of the kind of youth under 18s team wasn't great, but it taught me
Really?
other things. Yeah, it wasn't great. Don't get me wrong, there's some really, really good players, but it was more so, um, which probably what I needed is because, although I was conditioned and had discipline, I guess what they saw was my technical abilities, which
Ability,
I
right.
guess
Stood out.
English players don't generally have. So I stood out a little bit. What I needed is people to kick the shit out of me because I didn't have that. I used to come home a couple of times, just thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Not crying, but pretty close to thinking
Yeah.
this isn't for me.
Yeah.
But like I said, what was the alternative? Yeah, go back home or stick it out. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So, like you said, it's a make or break thing.
mm.
So, it was, a massive eye opener. But then, like I said, mate, I stuck it out, and obviously got my professional contract. And it wasn't all, okay, I've made it here. It's like, okay, well, that's the next door that's opened, because I'm starting from scratch, and then it's like, you know, one, um, I'm training, I'm competing with, your Michael Owens and all, Kieran Dyers and all these kind of guys over Femi Martins. And two, it's like, you know what, these guys are getting paid a shitload more than me. How
£100,
am I going to get
£100,000
the
a
coat?
week.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like ridiculous. And it's like, well, how am I going to get my foot in the door? When, like you said, they're obligated to pay those players when you're
Yeah.
paying them that much. You have to. Not for me.
Mm.
I think it's probably in the end that's a reason why I probably left. But mate, for me to basically, I call that my apprenticeship. Although I went pro, I call that my apprenticeship. For me to be training day in day out, I would suggest any player anywhere really, but obviously from me being Australian, coming out of Australia, if you can get yourself in that environment, not even play, does not matter. If you're playing in that environment, you'll become a better player.
Yeah.
And looking back now, obviously, you go through highs and lows of your career, and you think, like, when you're on, you're on.
Yeah.
I'm playing well, I'm training well. I was on. Like the last couple of years, you know what? I believe I should have been playing.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, a lot of politics, a lot of stuff that is involved. But it was amazing, and then with that as well, like I had some role models there that I guess took me under their wing, and then Kieran Dyer was a massive one, like
Amazing.
probably unbelievably underrated. He was a freak, and I guess he took a liking to me. They used to call me the Aussie Messi, because I had the long
Yeah, because
hair
you had the
there as
long
well.
hair and the
Yeah, I got the
F50s at the
long hair.
time,
Yeah,
man.
the F50s. So they used to call me, Messi. But like just training with him, like I was young, I was there, and when you're in that environment, like it's you don't have half a second. You know what I mean? It's
No.
it's ridiculous, and if you lose a ball, you get told if you're doing certain things, and obviously I used to turn into players without knowing what's behind my back. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because I was young, I didn't know, and probably at a an academy level, you can potentially get away with it. When you're with the first team, they used to tell me all the time, mate, next time I'm going to smash it, next time I'm going to smash it. So then, little things like that, I still got in my head from back then. Always look what's around you, So, and then obviously just learning from those kind of players. I guess I was lucky enough at the time too. Craig Moore came to Newcastle,
That's
and then
right. I
Dukes
was going to
came
say,
to
Paducah, was
Newcastle
he
as
there
well.
with you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dukes was there as well. Um, so it was, mate, it was amazing. I guess I came through the academy too with Fraser Foster. Played for England. Playing, I
Fraser
think he's at
Foster, yep.
Celtic now,
Okay.
goalkeeper.
Oh, he's a
And
keeper. Yep.
he's a keeper, yeah. And Andy Carroll. There obviously Andy went on to some crazy things as well. But
He's back at Newcastle, yeah.
he's back at Newcastle now, so we kind of grew up together. Fraser used to pick me up at home, and we used to go to training together and stuff like that. So yeah, it was kind of us three boys, and there's still a photo. I think I got it on my computer and stuff. It's
Oh, you have to
a
send it
photo
to
of
us.
us three boys. And at the time we are in Europa, and I was, we used to travel. I was in the squad, and there's a photo of us three boys, and it was at Palermo, and Bresh was playing as well in Palermo, and
Yeah.
I didn't go up and say anything to him because I hadn't been involved with the national team either. So it's like,
Yeah.
I
Who am
was
I?
probably starstruck, and I'm like, who am I? He's not going to give a shit who I am. But Bresh was playing in Palermo at the time, and and like I said, just that time, and mate, I was on the bench for Premier League games. Ronaldo was coming through. Like there was just, like I said, that experience, those stadiums, training facilities, just everything. It was pretty special, and obviously, I think that's kind of massive chunk of my football, and I
Yeah.
think at the right time. So to have that apprenticeship, going into what was next. And I guess that's another reason why I went to Turkey. Like I said, I got really close with Emre Benazoglu, and not many people know this. I got offered another couple of years at Newcastle, but Kevin Keegan. I spoke to Kevin Keegan. He was a coach at the time. He didn't have it for long. He just came in, and really nice guy. Obviously, freak of a player.
Yeah.
But there was a whole heap of problems going on at the club at that time, and I just knew, I had a feeling. Me and my dad had a feeling that he wasn't going to stay around for long, and he didn't. Like pre-season came, and I think he was there for a couple of months, and he left.
Yes. Who came in?
But
Was it Glenn Roeder or
Glenn
was
Roeder
it?
was there. I had Sam Allardyce. Then it was Kevin Keegan. And
Okay.
then, like I said, it was my contract was up. It was coming to the off season. He offered me a contract. Did me a really good favor actually. He said to I can say it now because it was a long time ago. He said to the club, um, he said to me, there's an offer on the table. Um, you can take it. If you don't, I'll tell the club I'm releasing you. And then your next club, there's no training compensation. So I was there for 4.5 years. The club I went to in Turkey would have had to pay. I don't know what it was. Would have been
Wow.
a bit
So he
of a
did you a
bit of
solid really to
bit of
allow
quid.
you.
Yeah. So it did me a solid. And I just felt at that time, I was what was I? I was 19. That last season, I went to go on loan in Holland. Sam Allardyce called me back, and I thought, you know what, this is it. I'm getting on. I'm getting some game time, you know,
Yeah.
and it didn't happen, and you know that was fine. But I thought I needed to play some regular first team football, which that was never going to happen at Newcastle. You know, I would have stayed
Yeah.
there when I played in the Premier League, and that would have been nice, you know. But I just thought I needed to play regularly because I think we had the Olympics coming up, Beijing Olympics,
Yeah.
and then I guess a lot of my moves have been based on right or wrong has been
Socceroos.
based on Socceroos as well. So it's always been important for me to play. So and then coming back to what I was saying, Emre, I was close with Emre. He kind of helped me get to Turkey. Obviously, you know, if someone like that is saying to a Turkish club, you know, sign this kid who was
Yeah, they're
captain of
gonna sign you.
Turkey, they're going to sign you. You know what I mean? He's like a god.
Mm.
And he was like, you know what? If you can play in Turkey, you can play anywhere, literally anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And that was kind of one of the reasons why I moved to Turkey, and obviously Bruce was there at the time as well, so that that helped a lot as well. But I guess that was my transition, obviously leaving Newcastle, going to Turkey. So and the reason for that.
Yeah. Um, because what I was gonna say, sorry, James, you just cut out there. Oh, there you are.
Right,
We'll
you got
cut
me.
that out. That's fine. Yeah, yeah, I got you back. No, I was just gonna say because this obviously was a big part for me when just like looking at your career, I felt like that foundation you had at Newcastle must have been like not just great for performance and getting an eye of like actually how quick the game moves at the top level with top
Yeah,
players, but also like the mentality to withstand a lot of like brutal training sessions, brutal feedback, getting kicked,
yeah,
not getting games, but like sticking it out and like
yeah,
waiting for the right time to then make that move. And then obviously Turkey came about, and you've explained why, because I was keen to understand what led you to move there. But looking at your career, because you went to Gençlerbirliğ, is that how you pronounce it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Genç,
Against the Yeah,
Genç, yeah, that's it.
yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
it.
but you, that's what I felt like you established yourself there as like a
Yeah,
professional footballer,
yeah,
because you had
100%.
4 years in Turkey across two
Yeah,
clubs. Well, yeah, and you like
yeah,
your
two
numbers there
clubs.
are pretty good.
Yeah, they're massive. Yeah, and like you said, it kind of that was me doing my thing, playing with big boys and
Yeah,
earning my stripes kind of thing. So um, massive experience. You know, like I said, if you can play in Turkey, you can play in a lot of countries, and it's just insane. You know what I mean? There's so many other things kind of you have to put up with. That's different to like in England or in Australia or so yeah, there it's not just football. You know, in England, you're a footballer, you're a star, you're wrapped in a bubble. You know, in
yeah.
Turkey, there's so many other things in terms of fans and all the other kind of things you have to.
Yeah, you mentioned before like having some Aussies with you, Bruce, and then obviously Mila Jedinak was over there at the time. But I was keen to because, as you said, your performances were pretty strong there at a young age, and that was
Mm,
probably a great time to establish yourself as a pro football, and probably gave you the confidence of like a lot of the hard work and sacrifice you'd done is like it's coming to fruition now. Like there's some end product that people are
yeah,
you're getting the recognition you deserve. But I'm keen to understand the other side too, because you went to England, and obviously England has its own dynamic, and it's your first time abroad living there. But then coming to Turkey, it's a little bit different culturally. It's a bit different. The language barrier, obviously, the professionalism isn't maybe the same. So can you explain to us, I guess, maybe
yeah,
some of the challenges you had whilst living in Turkey? Because obviously on the field you managed to keep your performance strong, but what was it like off the field for
yeah,
you?
yeah. Like I said, massive culture shock. It is how do I put it? Yeah, it is. It's challenging. Obviously, at times, it's like I said, coming from the UK and coming from a place like Australia, everything's pretty straight and narrow. It's all kind of relatively set in stone. You know where you're going to get. In Turkey, it's like anything goes. Um, so, like I said, it was obviously the professionalism wasn't so much there. The just I guess just the culture was completely different. Probably the first thing was like the mosques.
Yeah,
The mosques go every what is it? It's 4 or 5 times a day.
yeah,
and that was kind of something that we had to get used to, obviously, because the mosques are pretty much in every kind of little suburb.
So you hear the prayers all through the night and stuff too, hey?
So you hear the prayers all through the night.
Yeah.
So that was obviously one thing. Another one that obviously stands out, if I was to pinpoint one thing, it was probably the sacrifice. If you weren't doing well, or the team wasn't doing well, or whatever reason, they'd like sacrifice an animal, a goat.
Whoa.
And then
Bro.
they were literally happened a couple times. Like I actually never went there and obviously watched it because it's pretty gruesome. You know what I mean? They get a knife and slit the throat. They get the blood and they obviously say a little prayer and they put the blood on their forehead and then, in all fairness, that kind of meat goes to what's generally meant to go to someone that's kind of less fortunate,
Underprivileged, okay.
underprivileged, whether you're homeless or whatever it is, that's what it's meant to be. It's like,
Wow.
but I'm just thinking, mate, we're just going to kick a ball, try to win a game. These guys are sacrificing an
Slaughtering
animal.
animals.
It's like, slaughtering animals. Like, whoa, you know what I mean? I guess another thing, like coming back. So, like, I had my first year, and it was in Ankara, and then I went to another club, obviously Kayseri.
Yeah.
And it was a very the president of Turkey still is from Kayseri.
So this is
So
your second
he,
club now in Turkey after
this was
Gençler, right?
this was a second club.
Yeah.
So he's the president of Turkey. He's from that city, so he invested a ton of money in building like a 50,000 seater stadium, brand new facilities. But it was literally like living in a country village. There was still horse and cart. Like it was pretty traditional. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And one thing, like, as that sticks in my mind still as well is and what we were going back on, what does it mean?
What's your why?
Kids. There were kids, like I'm talking 14, 15-year-olds, wanted to play football because the club would feed them, right? And the club would feed them meat. And that was the first time they've ever eaten meat. You know what I mean? So it's like, I still get goosebumps. That's the reality of it. And it's like, it's insane. You know what I mean? So it's like, you're not talking to, that's 13, 14-year-olds, first time they eat, like, basically eating meat, and they want to be crazy stuff.
But what obviously for you now, you've had an experience in a couple countries, you've had some experience at the pro level where you're confident in your game, you've had proper performances at a top level team or in a top level league with a big club, and then the Socceroos. I do want to go into some of the more recent parts of your career, but obviously the Socceroos aspect to your career is a massive component. As you said, even you dictated some of your moves around the tournaments to make these sacrifices, because obviously playing at World Cups, playing in Asian Cups, playing at the Olympics are all things that everyone who's done them look back and kind of say that they're some of the major highlights. For you made your debut, I think, for the Socceroos was back in 2008, which is a long time ago now.
Yeah. So, yeah. So basically, to touch back on, I guess, Newcastle, my upbringing, because I was with my father in the academy. I never went through like the state teams, and I never went to the Joeys and
Right.
the young Socceroos and stuff like that. I went straight over, so I was unknown.
Right.
And it was only till Craig Moore came to Newcastle, and he's like, why haven't you been involved with the national team and stuff like that? And he's like, can I put your name for it? I said, yeah, no problem. So he put my name forward, and my first initiation was with the Socceroos in London against Ghana.
Wow.
So that was like I came there, trained. Might have sat on the bench. I can't remember exactly,
the whole
but
the whole youth system.
so bypassed the whole thing, and then, like I said, that was my first bit, and then from there it was Olympic qualifiers, Olympics. So that's kind of how that happened there.
Wow. Okay, so just going into some of these, because there's a period, and this is where James Troisi's career gets a little bit crazy, because yeah, all of a sudden now, I think, was it after Turkey you went to Atalanta?
Yeah. So what happened was I was at Gençler Birliği. I had a buyout clause in my contract. Obviously, I did, like I said, I did really, really well.
Yeah,
They put a massive figure on my head. It's like 4 million euros.
beautiful.
Because a lot of the big clubs were interested, like your Galatasaray, Besiktas.
Okay.
Because if you perform well against those clubs, then you're doing the thing.
Yeah. They're playing in the
Um,
Champions League, these clubs.
they're playing Champions League. I had a buyout of 1 million US. Um, the club I went to, Kayseri, I scored a hat trick against them
Wow.
that season. So they liked me. They took me there. I signed a 4-year deal with them. I was only there for 3 years. I had a few issues with injury. Came back to Australia, had an operation, went back over. So I probably 18 months of not much football because I had, like I said, a lot of issues, and at the time I had never had really any injuries. And this was another thing going into Turkey. The medical staff and stuff like that is some clubs it's non-existent.
Yeah.
So I had a really difficult time there. And then the thing is like I said, they invested in me. They bought me. My contract was good. I was there. I was their star, even though I was young.
Yeah.
Uh, if you get injured in Turkey, not that you're done, but you're pretty much done.
What,
They're not
in
like
like the coaches and fans' eyes, like you don't get the respect, or what do you mean by that? Like,
it's not the coaches and it's not the fans. It's kind of the directors. They're the ones that pretty much run the show there.
right.
So I didn't get paid for 8
I was
months.
just about to say, don't tell me when you
Yeah,
get its payment. Wow.
yeah, payments. And they'd give you a bonus here and there, and they'd give you a month's salary here and there. But like in the end, I didn't get paid for a long period of time.
That's mental, dude.
The last season I was there, so I was the third season of my four-year contract. I kind of terminated because, like I said, it was 7 months. And in saying that, so remember, Felipe Melo
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Brazilian
playing.
midfielder.
He was playing at Galatasaray
Yeah.
on loan from Juventus. Reto Ziegler was playing at Fenerbahce, left back, Swiss international.
Yeah.
I think he's playing in America now. He was playing for Fenerbahce. So my father looked after me up until that time, and then I was like, you know what, I want to go to mainstream Europe. So I had an Australian agent that was based in London, come down, and I ended up, signing with him. And he had connections with Juventus, and Juventus had seen me because obviously they were watching their players, and so I ended up signing a 4-year deal with Juventus.
Oh, shut the front door. That's
Yeah.
the biggest, arguably the top 5 biggest clubs in the world. And
Yeah,
how old were you when you
100%.
signed that contract?
So I was 24, I think.
Fuck, bro.
Yeah, probably 24.
That
Yeah, I
is
think I was 24.
intense, man.
Seems so long ago.
But what's that?
Yeah,
What
so
was that? What
like I
was that
said,
like for you? I mean, like putting pen to paper.
I was in shock. Yeah, couldn't believe it. I think I remember it like I was back home in the off season. I was back home for holiday. My old man was screaming, waking me up in the morning from downstairs. I was upstairs, and he was like, "We're going to Juventus. We're going to Juventus." So like, the agent called him. Like I said, it was like 6 in the morning, and it was just still couldn't believe it. So,
Wow.
and then obviously, went there, did my medicals, was involved with the first team, tours around the stadiums, stuff like that. Brand new stadium as well, the new stadium they're in now.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, there's only one other Aussie, Jess Van Straten, goalkeeper.
Yeah.
That's that played for Juventus.
Yeah.
So, massive when a club like that comes knocking on your door, you don't say no,
No,
or for whatever happens. And I knew I knew I wasn't going to play there, straight away. And I knew that because, like I said, the biggest club in Italy, one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Yeah.
So I knew straight away I was going to go on loan, and then I went on loan to Atalanta. And I guess that was the start of, I guess, a little bit of the craziness with me moving regularly, because, like I said, I had done 4 years in Turkey, 4 years in England.
Yeah.
And then I guess I was moving, and it was more so I had to move because we had something. So it was an Asian Cup, it was a World Cup, it was a Confeds Cup.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, there's a lot of other things that go on in football which people don't see, and Atalanta, although, like, I think I played, can't remember, 9 games in Serie A, played in the cup against Roma, but it wasn't the right club for me.
Yeah.
We had a very old school coach, Stefano Colantuono. He was played Serie C, Serie D. Just like, obviously I had a little bit of pace back then.
Yeah.
So it was more so they were putting me wide.
Okay.
But it was park the bus, 5, 6 at the back sometimes.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I couldn't show my ability.
Yeah, you just didn't have that freedom.
And didn't have that freedom. And to be fair, the step from, although Turkey was good and it was hard and you're playing against some ridiculous players, the step from, I guess, Turkey to mainstream Europe, you're talking about one of the best leagues in the world.
Yeah. It
was pretty big. So it took me a bit of time to get used to. Looking back, probably should have went to a smaller club or like a Serie B, played a bit more and then see what happened. But it is what it is. So and then I guess from there, so like I said, from the whole time. So even when I was back at Victory that first time, I was on loan from Juventus.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you came back for a season. You had a season, didn't you?
Yeah.
You killed it that
so
season.
Basically, so that season I came back. There was an inkling that Andrew was going to get the job for the Socceroos.
Yeah.
So he brought me back. So I went back. So I had the season with Atalanta. I went back there. But I said to my agent, listen, I need to play. I need to play because the World Cup's coming. So Ange actually called me. I was in Italy. And he's like, come back, you'll play, we'll get you back into the Socceroos. Because there was a couple of seasons before that where Kim and who was the other one? I didn't play it for a whole year with the Socceroos for whatever reasons. Different flavors. So obviously I knew coming back with Ange and coming back, I guess, I knew it's somewhere where I'm going to play regularly. And in saying that, I came back, did well, and I went to the World Cup. So, kind of job accomplished. Year later, same kind of thing. Went to Belgium. Killed it, scored some absolute bombs.
Yeah, I've seen those bombs.
That season, yeah.
Highly recommend anyone jump on YouTube. I think there's a kind of a highlight reel. It goes 15 minutes. It's quite over 50,000 views. But there's some absolute rainmakers from 30, 40 yards of you just turning, taking a couple touches and bang, top bins.
Yeah. Chip, he still won't like this, but Chip made it run from halfway. So
shout out, Matty.
Yeah, he was playing at Bruges at the time,
right?
And it was the same kind of thing. I probably could have went to a bigger club, but in Belgium or just in general. But I kind of went to a club where I knew I was going to play.
Did you have that perspective though? Because of obviously you've had the experiences at Newcastle, big club, didn't really play much. Then went to Juventus, or it's hard to get a gig, even Atalanta, with different styles that you valued, if I'm going to live overseas, I'm going to play, and especially with the Socceroos, when you're in that sort of peripherals of the coach, it's like you've got to play every week. So lowering your eyes to other teams where you know you're going to play, you're probably going to be happier too, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and at the time as well, it was fine for me because I was getting paid by Juventus,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean. So my salary stayed the same. So whether I'm coming to Australia or whether I'm going to a place like Belgium, it didn't affect me at all
So
in terms of that kind of
Victory
and that
didn't pay
side
your
of things.
wages, nothing.
They didn't pay my wages. I think they paid a little fee to
Right.
Juventus, but they didn't pay my wages. So um, it, uh, it didn't affect me, and obviously I was happy to do that because, like I said, I'm getting paid normally and I'm playing, which is what every player wants.
Yeah.
Um, I guess because maybe because of what happened at not at Newcastle, and I guess like I said, Belgium. I went to Belgium because in January we had the Asian Cup.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I same thing. I needed to play. I think if at my age and if you're going to say an Atalanta or a Juventus or a club in the UK, is like an initiation. You need to stay a certain amount of years or do the hard yards a little bit. And
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared to do that because I wanted to play. You know what I mean? So I could have went to a bigger club, but then I might have to bite my time and because of so many different reasons, or maybe my quality's not there yet, or like I said, you got gun players getting paid a shitload of money, and you
Yeah.
got to play
They
them.
got to play right.
So but I guess I kind of done that at Newcastle for 2.5 years. So it's like, I know what it's like. I need to play, and like I said, all these little things came up: Olympics, Asian World Cup, then Asian Cup. So it was kind of like I said. The moves I made are because of the kind of cards I was dealt, and a bit of it was obviously with the national team because
Mm.
every player wants to play for their country, represent their country, and I love Australia. So for me, it was. And as well, it kind of breaks up things as well. You have international
Of
breaks,
course.
so I get to come home or wherever it is. We get to meet in Europe, get to see good physios, get looked after, all those kind of things. Because, like I said, when I'm in a place like Turkey,
Yeah.
when I'm in a place like Belgium, like we're doing 3-hour sessions.
Jesus.
We're yeah, like we're doing it 2 days or 2 times a day. Where it's minus 10 degrees. It's Turkey. Like I said, Turkey. Like I had ductor release, my groins. Not osteitis, but I had problems with my groins, and I didn't know what it was. They didn't know what it
Oh
was.
no.
They did a little bit of ultrasound, and I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be all right. You know what I mean? In the end, I couldn't even get into the car. I had to lift my leg up to get into the car. You know what I mean? So it was like going away and seeing physios like we have, and then sending you programs and stuff like that. Then I can maintain my body. I can do
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
breaks it
Yeah.
up. So that's another important side of things that kind of helped me being involved with the national team and breaking it up a little bit as well.
Man, so the national team for you, like, there was a period where, I think 3 or 4 years you were, still kind of in and around it now, but the 3 or 4 years you were like a pivotal part of every squad and major tournaments, and it started probably
Mm.
before the 2014 World Cup, but obviously the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, it's like the home of football.
Yeah.
What was like making that team, then going to that tournament, like Timmy Cahill scoring that goal against Holland, the whole experience, what was
Yeah.
that just freaking amazing?
Yeah, I guess it's a pinnacle, isn't it? In
Oh,
you know, in football and what we can do. I think for me, it's like World Cup and then maybe Champions League.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
it's 100%.
So yeah, so as a kid, yeah, I want to go to a World Cup. It's like how many kids actually get to go to a World Cup? So yeah, massive, massive, massive achievement. In saying that, my mentality, I've never been satisfied. I've always wanted more, I guess. So it was like I went to one World Cup, but I should have went to another one,
Mm,
and could have went to three
yeah,
potentially.
yeah.
Obviously, I have that there, and like I said, there's a lot of other things that
What ifs?
happen, what ifs, and things that happen, and politics that people don't see, and things that go on. And I guess that's probably why I believe I'm not involved now.
Mm,
32. Um, like I said,
But do
fit.
you feel mentally, physically you could be?
100%.
I don't
You
think
know,
that.
100%. But like I said, it happened. I got asked a couple of questions, and I told the truth, and I knew before that whilst whilst Arnie is involved, then I won't really play for Australia.
Yeah.
So like I said, I told the truth, and I guess I think as you get older, and as I've gotten older anyway, and I've always seen things, and I've always been taught to see things, black and white, and call a spade a spade. So, and I wouldn't advise younger boys to come out and do that because I didn't do it when I was younger.
Yeah.
But I guess the stage in my career and the stage in my life, I'm just going to say it as it is. And if obviously some people don't like that, it's not about making controversy or being bitter or anything like that. It's just telling the truth.
Best way to be,
And
man.
like you said, you get hammered for it and whatever. But at least I can look at myself in the mirror at night and say, you know what, I said what I had to say. I got asked the question. I'm honest. If people don't like it, whatever, you can twist however way you want to twist it.
Yeah.
But if it's coming out of my mouth, it is what it is. So, like I said, I think I got shafted a little bit in Russia. I was part of the process of leading up there. I came
Was
into
the
camp.
26-man camp? Was that, were you involved in that, weren't you? Was the
Y-
last
Yeah,
30
yeah,
at
yeah.
least?
So that was the last 30.
Yeah.
So I came in there, and like I said, physically, I was flying. I had a good season. Um, just
Fair, man.
for whatever
It's,
reason.
man, this is
Yeah,
the thing.
and yeah, and that's the thing. Like, uh, uh, there was a lot of stuff that went on. Like I said, I was pretty much. I don't know why. Like I said, I don't know what influence was involved there, but I didn't. We had I think 4 or 5 friendly games prior to that with the gaffer, and I think I played about 5 minutes. I was the only one to play about 5 minutes I think it was Colombia in London came on. That's it. So I never really got given that opportunity either. So if I got given the opportunity and I wasn't training well or had a bad attitude, then you can kind of see the writing on the wall. I think what happened was Tommy Urich was injured. I think Jamie Mack came in, didn't he?
Yeah, he
And
did.
yeah,
Out of
yeah, out of
nowhere. He's got a
nowhere,
hat-trick at
out
Hibs.
of nowhere, and they both of them kind of stayed. And obviously I got the flick, and like I said, it's nothing against those boys or anything like that, but it was like, well, they're not even in my position. You know what I mean? So
No,
it was like,
that's
it
random
was
as anything,
real.
right?
But like I said, um, that's football, is what it is.
Does that the way you are, because you're pretty, like, you're mentally strong,
Yeah.
so you strike me as a guy that experience is only going to make you better. But do you use that as like fuel now, like even now, like 4 or 5 years on, to be like, oh, I should have been there, or do you kind of just accept and move on, and you're in the now of like what's
Well,
important?
you have to accept that and move on because, like I said, it is what it is. I think,
Yeah, you can't change it.
like I said, if you go into a camp, or if you have a bad attitude, or if you don't do the right things and you're not ticking the boxes, then you're given you're giving someone the opportunity to be like, you know what, you don't deserve to be here. I didn't do that. But in saying that, like I said, football is a game of perspective, and opinions. You know what I mean? It's a game of opinions. So for whatever reason, I didn't even speak to the coach. I kind of knew it was going to happen. I
Yeah.
just had a feeling. You know what I mean? I just had a feeling. Um, so, like I said, it is what it is. Does it fuel me? No, not really. I don't think so. Like, uh, I'm a little bit one like, I keep a lot of things built up inside me, and
Bottled
not
up,
that I
yeah.
hold grudges, but like I said, I think if you kind of do the wrong thing, you do the wrong thing by me. You know what I mean? So I felt that was the wrong
Mm.
thing, and it was just like, you know what? Although I think I still should be there, I should have been there. You just got to move on. That's
Yeah.
just life. That's just football.
Because this is what I always talk about, and like a lot of people don't understand. No matter how good of a footballer you are, like environments can be so great and so tough, depending on like coaches,
Yeah,
because it is a game of perspective and opinions, and you can have a season where your numbers and stack up much more than someone else's to make a World Cup squad, for example. But like a playing style may suit someone else. So, like, Jamie Mack came in out of nowhere, and like his dream was filled as a World Cup. Like a crazy story.
And that's the thing, like,
but no, go ahead.
Yeah, like one door opens, the other one closes. Like, so for me, it was, I was distraught. Like I said, I guess I had my moments, and because the thing is, like you said, you're never getting that back. That's never coming back. And although I'd been to one, it's like, I should have been to another one, but that was taken from me. But like I said, then Jamie Mack, fantastic, good on him. He's gone to a World Cup. You know what I mean? Like, it's and that's how things happen so quickly, and that's
football.
That's football. That's sport. It's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Well, let's talk about probably one of my biggest highlight, as probably outside of the goals in Japan with Timmy Cahill and making the World Cup in 2005, but like obviously winning the Asian Cup for many Australians is probably the most recent like accolade that we can all hold dear to, other than the World Cups. But I mean, that tournament itself was pretty special, being that it was in Australia. It was kind of like a new generation of Socceroos coming through with Ange. You were obviously a pivotal part of his plans and had that season with victory as well, leading into it. And also, I think, were you at Belgium at the time of the tournament?
I was in Belgium.
You were in Belgium then. So you were flying. Yeah. But I mean, that goal, I mean, the tournament itself was great. And how much did you play through the whole tournament?
Yeah, so
kind of consistent.
Played the first game, didn't play the second. Played against South Korea. So yeah, it was a little bit on and off. He had his kind of probably 3 or 4 or 5 players that kind of played the whole way through, and then he was chopping and changing a little bit. So yeah.
Because this comes back to as well, and this is, everyone would see you scoring the winning goal and like, James Troisi scored the winning goal, won us the Asian Cup.
Yeah.
But what people don't see is probably the in and out aspect throughout the whole tournament and the mentality required to be like, well, if I'm going to come in off the bench, like, I'm not fucking going to sit here and have a sook or play down. Like, I'm coming in to make an impact and like change the game and win the tournament for my team.
Yeah.
So like that moment in itself is like, everyone sees it, it was a tap in, but like, no, it's so much more than that. It comes back to all the foundation of all the hard work you've done and the mentality required to be in a moment where you're still motivated to come in and prove a point and actually have the ability to change a game. Was that like, for those, and we're going to put the clip at the start of this episode so everyone will see the Jimmy's Asian Cup goal and his duck and weave of the celebration. Yeah. But like, can you explain that just freaking moment, man? Because that was electric.
Yeah, and like you said, I still think today it's like, I was actually, like I said, because I've never been that satisfied. I've always wanted more, and I've always wanted to play, and it's like the same thing. I played the first game. Who did we play? It might have been Q8 at Amy Park.
Yeah,
I had a ripper game. Scored. Next game I'm not playing. It's like, what's going on? You know what I mean? So it was like he said, and it was, and then we played South Korea in Brisbane, humid as. I don't know if you remember. There was like moths around the whole pitch. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And then we ended up, I think we drew the game, or we might have lost. I reckon we lost it. And then like the media was like, oh, these boys shouldn't be staying, or this should be happening, or that should be happening, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, like you said, long story short, just get on with it. You have to get on with it, because, if you're sitting there sulking, that's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help yourself. If anything, it's going to be a detriment to you, because if you're moping around, the gaffer's going to see it, people are going to see it, so it's like, even the final didn't start, you know what I mean? So, that's the thing, people don't see it, you got to mentally be strong and focused and prepared at all times, because, to be honest, coming on to a game I hate it. Always hated it.
It's hard. It's harder, man.
It's harder.
I talk. Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's like
8 minutes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Even if you come on 35 minutes or whatever, it's bloody hard. You can't get into the game. You know what I mean. So, and that happened, in my career as well. Like, saying in Italy, coming on, trying to make an impact in 30 minutes, you're doing things that you normally wouldn't do if you're starting a game, because you want to impress, you want to come
Yeah.
on. So you're doing things, like you said, that you shouldn't be doing. And then you're coming on to games that, potentially, okay, obviously, Asian Cup final, we needed to win it. So, had to go for it. But other games, if you're coming on and you're winning, you're trying to dribble players and score goals. Wait a minute, you need to be keeping the ball and, and playing simple. So there's all these other little things. But I've always had a knack of, I guess, of scoring goals, and I guess that's why being an attacking midfielder that scores goals is very valuable. So, people see it, oh, it was a lucky tap in. I could have easily skied that, easily, and you know what I mean? Like, you see it happen all the time, different story. And then I guess at the pace I was running in, I kind of seen, obviously, I was actually throwing my hands up because I was saying, like, Tommy, cross the ball earlier. He ended up, he ended up doing wonders, and it was just like, I'm on that front foot. No one's going to beat me to this ball. You know what I mean? The knack of getting in front of the player and finishing. You know what I mean? So if you see my first goal in the Asian Cup, have a look at it. It was the same kind of thing. Lecky had the ball. He was dribbling, and I literally stuck my toe in through like 3 defenders, and we scored. You know what I mean? So just having that little knack and having that instinct of, like, pouncing on it. And then obviously, mate, just the emotions were ridiculous. We were actually talking about this.
The stadium was
it was pumping.
crazy.
I think it was like, I don't know, it was 86,000, and it could have been 90, but then they had a certain amount of number for the media and stuff like that. It was obviously insane. In saying that, we were speaking about this actually the other day with a few of the boys. We're like, we had that golden generation, and then, like, they were ridiculous, high profile boys, and obviously there was that Uruguay game where we qualified, and Johnny was, massive moment. They never won silverware, and like I said, mate, I have ridiculous respect for these boys, and amazing careers, and like I said, a lot of them played at a ridiculously high level. But in saying, that our generation, or that group of players that won the Asian Cup, it was the first time Australia ever won silverware. And not just because I scored, doesn't matter. Even if I wasn't involved in the tournament, it was the first time we ever won silverware. And to do that in an Asian Cup on home soil, I still think, I really, and it's hard for us to comprehend as well, is because, like, it was big, but it was like we did it. A couple of days later, it was like, because in saying it too, we all had to go back to Europe because we were all mid-season. You know what I mean? So we couldn't really. But it's huge. You know what I mean? Like, it's, and I guess that's one thing in terms of, I can tick off in my box. You're winning silverware. That can never be erased. You know what I mean? That goes down in history. So but I still think, like, what we did that night or that tournament, was massive. Like I said, it's the first time we've ever won silverware, and and unfortunately, you look at the state of the league, Australian football at the moment, the national team. I don't know if that's going to come around anytime soon. You know what I mean?
Man, this is what I'm speaking of as well for me, right? And I've been fascinated because you're completely right. I mean, we all play the game for silverware. Like, obviously it's fun, but ultimately everyone wants to win trophies. And greatest respect to the golden generation as well. That what they did in their period was, like, put football on the map in this country.
100%.
And everyone was like, we're at World Cups, and then we, in some ways overperformed in a really tough group. But in saying that, in 2015 was like, holy crap, we can win major tournaments. And, like, obviously it was on home soil, and for those that aren't necessarily the biggest football fans, like, playing in Asia is really tough. Not just because the opposition's all different in quality, but I mean the environments that the Socceroos have to go through, which is so foreign in regards to, like, humidity, weather, time zones. Like, there's sometimes you almost, like, and you probably speak to this more than anyone, but I played in Asia with the young Socceroos and the Olyroos, and it's like playing the conditions was more important than the opposition at times.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
You knew you could beat them, but it's like the condition could fucking beat
us. It levels it out. You know what I mean?
It does, man.
It's like you said, just doing all that. It's got nothing to do with your ability. how
Nah,
good your
man.
team is. Like you said, some of the places we've had to go to, it's just insane, and the conditions we've had to play in and be in, it's it's frightening. It's like a storyteller. You know what I mean? It's a storybook. It's pretty full on. And like you said,
Yeah.
till I guess that goes back to what kind of mentality do you have? You know, what do you like as a person, as a player? What affects you?
Yeah.
So for me, playing in a Turkey and I guess a little bit later on playing in a China, a Saudi Arabia,
Mm.
like I said, but the main probably one at a young age playing in Turkey. Well, then I can do anything pretty much. I can play anywhere because some of the conditions
Correct.
I've had to play in Turkey were pretty full on. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, so um, there's so many other things, and that's the thing, like you said, when it's the humidity is ridiculous, when the fans are crazy. People don't understand when they're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning watching us. They're just sitting home on their couch, and they don't
Yeah.
you can't it's not their fault. You can't fathom one, how we got there in the first place. Two, what's kind of on offer, what kind of training facilities we've had to do, and then what we're training on and what stadium we're playing on and stuff like that. Because even when you're up in the stand, you look at the pitch, it looks nice and green, but sometimes it's absolutely terrible. Or sometimes they
Yeah.
paint the pitch green, so it looks nice. But it's
Jesus.
there's all these
The dirt
different kind of
track.
the dirt track. There's all these different conditions and obstacles you have to overcome. So it's like I said, it kind of um, uh, it's not real more so, or we're Australian or we got some good players playing in Europe, or whatever. It's all the other things that you have to kind of overcome.
Yeah. So there's a couple more questions I want to ask before we round the podcast out because, as we've spoken of, Jimmy's had a pretty illustrious career overseas from an experience point of view as well. It's like culturally the changes. I mean, you've lived in the Middle East, you played in China, Turkey, England. You come back to the A League and essentially, won silverware and dominated the league. Really, in my opinion, for a long part of your time here. But one thing that always did shock me, and you mentioned it before, which I'm keen to get your perspective on, because obviously you've been around the game long enough. You came into the A League at a time where I think it might have been your first year with Ange, maybe a couple of years before that, and the years around that time where you were in Ange, where I thought the A League was at its
Yeah,
peak in
100%.
regards to like
Yeah.
the quality of players we could get from an Aussie
Hmm.
standpoint, and players like yourself in the peak. We had Dario Vidicic was at his peak. There's
Yeah.
multiple players, but then as well as the imports we were attracting,
Yeah.
the Del Pieros, Shinji Onos, Robbie Fowlers. I mean, there's heaps. Del Pierre,
Yeah.
all these other guys, Fahid. But like from the 2015 Asian Cup, winning that you would think would propel the A League or propel more interest in the game, or more revenue, whatever it may be. Why don't you think that happened?
Uh, in all honesty, I just think we still have the wrong people running the game. It's as simple as
Yeah,
that. I think
yeah,
you still look today, the amount of youngsters playing soccer is higher than any other sport in the country.
exactly.
So
It's
like I said, I've experienced a lot of things and then seen a lot of things, and I just don't think we have the right people running the game. Our youth development systems haven't changed since I left, and if not, they've gotten worse.
yeah,
First
man.
first time back I came with Ange, Derby was 45, 50,000 that Eddie had Marvel. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I was thinking, shit, man, I'm playing in Europe. Like it's unreal. We've got flares, we've got you know. Now
it's electric, man.
electric. Now you get you can't have flares. You get in trouble. Like yeah, it needs to be controlled. People can't be throwing flares left, right, and centre. I understand you got families, you want to create a family environment, but that is the culture, that is the ethnicity of football. You
Yep.
need that. Players need that. That's gone. doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like I said, unfortunately now, you know, can't get people to games, and like
Yeah.
the state of the league is in a really bad way. And in saying that, this reflects on the national team. So,
It
I
does.
obviously, not got a lot of moves, but there was a lot of interest um, in me when, especially, I did well with the national team, and that's for a lot of players. So, like I said, probably I reckon this has been happening for about 5, 6 years now. That the league has dropped, the quality has dropped, the national team has done okay, so the demand of Australian players isn't there. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and you see it, like you see now, the demand for Australian players is in India. When I went to, right or wrong, when I went to the Middle East, when I went to Saudi, um, like I said, we won the Asian Cup. The
Yeah.
demand was there. There was an influx of boys going to China. There's about 5, 6 of us going to China. You know what I mean? So, yeah, the demand was there. Um, Very, very difficult now for Australian players. And I guess looking back now, um, I've obviously come back for different reasons. Like I said, family now is extremely important,
Of
and I've been
course.
away for a long time. And I guess um, not that I've been stuck here now, but it's been very difficult for me to leave,
Yeah.
even if
Of
I'm
course.
doing really well. Like I said, I and unfortunately, because of, I guess, for whatever reason, and you know what, it's been like this for a long, long time. Uh, Europe and a lot of other countries don't see the league as very good, basically. Um, so it makes it very difficult. You know what I mean? You got to be doing some.
Yeah.
You got to be scoring 20 goals. You got to be doing ridiculously well, and then you got to and
Dominating. Yeah.
dominating. You got to come into the national team. You got to dominate. And I guess I there was a little point in my career where I came. Obviously, I was at Victory. I was negotiating contracts. Didn't happen. Had a good season. Went to the Confeds Cup. Um, Man of the match against Chile. Scored.
Chile. I was
And
about to say, don't leave that out.
yeah, you know what I mean. So and then it was like, okay, well, doesn't matter how many goals or what I'm doing in the A League. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I'm showing you what I can do against some of the best players in the world. Sanchez was playing, Vidal was
Yeah.
playing, goalkeeper was goalkeeper for Manchester City. I don't know if he's there now still.
Bravo.
Bravo, you
Bravo.
know what I
Bravo.
mean. So like I said, I've got man of the match. I've scored against him, and
That's crazy.
obviously it comes back to, I guess, a little bit of my agent and demand for Aussie players. Um, there was nothing really there for mainstream Europe. You know, there
Mm.
was that stuff that happened with Maccabi, and then Maccabi Haifa, and then came back to Oz. Like I said, it ended up working out in the end, that victory, and we signed a longer term deal. But like I said, now I've not that I've been stuck here, but I'm here now, and it's the longer you're here, the harder it is to get out. And for
Yeah.
me as well, it's like I'm playing at a good club, I'm playing well, I'm back home, got married, have a child, have a family. So it's
Yeah.
like
It's a bit
it's
different,
it,
hey?
it's different. And like I said, those are the kind of cards you dealt with, and you got to play them whichever way you do. So when I went to Saudi, it's like, oh yeah, he's just gone for the money. It was like, well, I didn't really have many other options either. And to be honest,
Mm.
I'm going to one of the biggest clubs in the Middle East. You know what I mean? That club I was at was next level.
Was
Like
that Al
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 Ittihad,
Ittihad?
like
Yeah,
there was a
it's a
lot
big.
of issues when I got there with the president leaving and all that kind of stuff. So when he left, there was no money, and then just a whole heap of stuff happened. We had like 4 coaches in 4 months. But in terms of football, we're playing in front of 80,000 people, men. was only men at that time. I think it's changed now. Mate, we're like superstars, like literally. Can't go anywhere. Away games, 3,000-4,000 people waiting outside, photos, this, that. Like, it was insane. You know what I mean? So it's like, and to be honest, in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is probably the best quality of football. You know what I mean? Quality of football. Like, the football is, like, the locals are lazy, but man, they got some ability. Like, you look at the Saudi national team.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff they do with that ball is like, unbelievably
Phenomenal.
talented. You know what I mean? So, and then obviously they got the money to get players. Like, I was with Sully Montari. He played for Inter Milan, played for AC Milan. He was there at the time with him. So, we used to hang out a bit, and it was just like they were, good locals. They got some good foreigners as well. But in saying that, the league is unstable because of, all the other stuff that goes on when that comes along with kind of going to those kind of countries. But like I said, it's just, people are quick to judge, oh, why did he do this, or why did he do that, why did he go there, why didn't he stay in Europe? And it's like, maybe he didn't have the options, mate. It's like, that's the cards he was dealt with, and that's the best.
That
you know
that.
what I mean? It's like, why did he leave Victory? Maybe there wasn't an option for me to stay at Victory, or it's like, that's what they don't see, and it's it's, I guess, going back to social media gives people a voice that shouldn't be potentially talking about those kind of things because they have no idea.
Yeah.
There's no repercussion for or accountability for someone behind a computer saying, oh, James is signing for that club, or James is doing this, or James has done that, when no, none of it's true. Probably, 2% of it may be true. You know what I mean? But there's no accountability. He doesn't get nothing for that. You know what I mean? So the amount of stories that have been written by me that are completely false, some are potentially true, not a lot. What am I going to do? Sit there and come out on social media and, video myself, oh yeah, that's not true, he's lying. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter for me because, like I said, I know what's true, I know what's right or wrong. But unfortunately, people that maybe don't understand football too well, which is probably a majority, people want to come to a game, they support a team, they want to enjoy the game. They don't understand or know what's going on with all the other kind of stuff. That's all they kind of see and hear, and it's like, then you're getting a lot of stick for it. Where, like I said, it's definitely not always true.
So I guess now, like as you said, you're getting more experienced. I'm not going to say you're getting older because that would justify you slowing down. And we've just spoken of at the start of the episode that you're pretty much the fittest guy in the United ranks.
It's a funny one because, like you said, so just
like,
to cut in there, it's a funny one as well because this is another thing I'm having to kind of deal with now. It's like, you're getting older. You're getting more injuries, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, and it's like, I'm older, but like I said, I'm the fittest in the team at 32. If anything, now I really know what my body needs. I know how to look after myself. I'm getting stronger. But that's another thing that older players that like I said, maybe players that are 32. Or there's definitely players that are kind of my age that have injuries or have had injuries that maybe that does slow them down and stuff like that. But that's another thing that I'm having to deal with now. It's like, maybe you're getting a bit older, you're this, a bit that. It's like, well, actually, I'm physically flying, so that's another thing.
Yeah, man, because that's why I feel for you. Like, I will not feel for you, but anyone now gets 30 plus kind of gets pigeonholed as though they're getting on. But like, you think of I think modern day sports science and athleticism just we're evolving with professional sport, that people in football in particular are prolonging their career for longer. I mean, Zlatan's the top scorer in the Serie A. Ronaldo's clearly not slowing down. Like the best players in the world are 33 plus. Like still, like Messi, Ronaldo. You got Ibrahimovic in Serie A. Like a lot of stuff. So for you, because I take it you're not one that's going to slow down this year or next year. But I mean, how do you have? Are you going to keep playing for as long as you can, or
it's a funny one, like you said. That how can you stereotype that kind of player when your best players in the world, over 33, or you know what I mean? Like, you can't do it.
Crazy, man.
This might get me into trouble a little bit, but I heard of a club that were not signing players over 30 on longer than a 1 year deal. You know, obviously
God.
won't say who the club and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, and their players, their best players, are well over 30, and I'm thinking, like, what kind of philosophy is that? Like, and to touch on that as well, I left when I was 15. I signed a professional contract when I was 17 and a half, 18, training with the first team at 18. Went to Turkey, playing 19 professional football for 4 years straight, and then throughout my career. You got players here,
Yeah.
21, 22, 23, haven't even played A-League games. So,
Yeah, man.
and they're
with
short
short seasons
seasons, you
too.
know
So
what I
if you're
mean? So
playing
it's
them, you're
like,
playing too many.
you can't be doing stuff like that
Yeah.
because your young players anymore, like now in this league, unfortunately, are not young in Europe. If you're
Yeah.
if you're only just starting to play at 20, 21, 22 in the A League, you're going to have a hell of a hard time going over to Europe. You got 20-year-olds playing in the World
Yeah,
Cup.
man.
You know, like you got 18-year-olds playing in the Premier League. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
it's scary, it's frightening, but that is the reality of what is going on. And I guess, touching back on things again, it's like the development system. Where is it? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
perfect example, Atalanta, January transfer window, we signed 5 players. 4 of those were over 34 years of age, right? Absolute
Wow.
beasts. I couldn't believe it. Like, the Italians, absolute beasts.
Yeah.
I thought going to Italy, like, it'd be pretty chilled. Mate, train like absolutely animals, you know. But I've been doing it since they were,
Yeah.
10 years old, so that's
Yeah.
why they can do it. But that is the difference of um, and especially looking at this league and just in general as well, though. Those are the players and that's the experience that are going to win you things or not. I think
Yeah,
I
man.
think I
Yeah.
think with the
100%
financial
agree.
problems of the league now, there's an influx of young players, which is not the way it works. You know,
No,
you
but
have
it's
your
cheaper
core.
to.
You bring 2 or 3 players in every season. They train with a normal football environment with older players, experienced players. Even in terms of the discipline and the way they carry on and all that kind of stuff. Now it's kind of the flip. You got 3, 4, 5 older players, or experienced players,
Yeah.
and the rest are young. You know what I mean? So not that it's their fault. It's not their fault, but that's just the way it's going, and it's not good. It's not a good way. It's not good for their development, and it's definitely not going to win you the league. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this is what I was mentioning before. It's like obviously there's an influx now of younger players because obviously financially it's a bit easier for clubs to have them and sustain them around, but also at the same time, you know, I devaluing your status just because you're 32
Mm,
is a bit unjust as well. Because like we said, you look at all some of the best leagues in the world. Like the best player in the NBA
yeah,
is
exactly.
one of the oldest. The best player in the
Yeah.
NFL, the best quarterback in the NFL is by far the oldest. Like so, age doesn't now. I feel like it's really. I'm hoping we get to a place where we're
Mm,
basing it off performance and like how the mental side, whether someone's feeling they're young, then that's all that really matters. But for you now, being so active and so fit, and also as you mentioned earlier, you've naturally always been quite a fit person, but dedicated to keeping your body right. I mean, do you want to keep playing for as long as you can, or are you starting to kind of plan, not necessarily plan
yeah.
your way out, but just have other interests outside of football that would maybe take over,
Yeah, I
playing
mean, I've
football for
definitely
you?
had other interests outside of football for a long time, and I'll continue to maintain that. Um, I guess for me, it's more of like, um, one, how much more do I have to give, which I believe is a lot. But there's a lot of other things that come into play as
Mm,
well. It's like, what's an ambition of the club? Am I still enjoying myself? Do I really want to do this? And am I going to give my all? And then obviously there's other kind of things that, if I want to stay in the A-League, that, if I'm getting devalued and all that kind of stuff, then is it worth my while? You know what I mean? Because I'm not asking for crazy amounts of dollars or anything like that, but I guess it has to be, I guess there's kind of a limit there, and there's a value to it and all that kind of stuff. So, physically, like I said, I could probably play till 36, 37, 38. I guess I'll just take like every season, every contract at a time, then reevaluate and reassess it, and obviously speak to the family and then see what they're thinking and what we're doing and all that kind of stuff as well. So, but definitely, money's never been a motivator for me. It's like money's important in everything you do. You know what I mean? And but ultimately, like I said, I've had some moves where, let me get this one thing: you're not coming back to the A-League for money. That's what people don't understand. Oh yes, even at Victory 100%. As a marquee, you're not coming back to Australia for money. You know what I mean? So like you said, people see it. Oh, he's coming back for money, or this, or he's moving because he's greedy. You know what I mean? Like you're not coming back to the A-League, trust me, for money. So but like I said, I think because I feel physically I'm fine, I have a lot to give. It's like, okay, well, what's an ambition of the club? Are we going to try and win the league? Because I've never been one to just, sit back and just play my football and just go through the motions. Even as I get older, you know what I mean? It doesn't interest me because I could only do it, I might be able to do it for a season or 6 months, something like that, but I'm not going to be able to do it for, 2, 3, 4 years. You know what I mean? So, obviously, you go to smaller clubs and there's more challenges and all that kind of stuff. So in short, I don't know yet. We'll see what happens. We'll play it by ear. There's obviously,
year by year.
There's obviously a lot of things that come with that. Like I said, the family for me is probably the most important thing now. But in saying that, I still have to provide for my family. So there's a lot of aspects to it. But it's hard for me now to pick up and go. And there was interest in, I guess, every transfer window there's a little bit of interest, but your Indias and stuff like that, I'm not really interested in doing that kind of stuff. So, obviously I'm home now. I don't know if that's going to be for how long or what's going to happen with the league or anything like that. But I still think I have to play for something, I guess when you're doing that, that's probably where you're going to get the best out of you as well. If there's something on the line, or if there's something you want to do, or something you want to show, or if you want to win the league, then I guess bring out the best of you as well.
Yeah, man, it's like that. What's the why? It's still always there. As long as there's a strong why, you're still going to keep going. But man, for those that are listening, this is I'll just say this is another side of James Troisi. Not many people have heard, bro. So I appreciate you coming on this episode, coming on the Unlaced podcast, being so open about your career. As I said, you've had from more of the modern day Socceroos, one of the most unique and well-rounded experiences across the globe in football, and have tasted it in some of the biggest leagues in the world, some of the strangest places in the world as well. So you've got a lot to give, and still more to give this year. And as I said earlier, one of my favourite players to watch in the A-League. So looking forward to watching you next season, man. It's going to be exciting. And we'll have to, when the season's up and running and everything's COVID safe, we'll have to get you in the studio
100%.
For a more updated version.
100%, mate. Thanks for having me. And I think, like you said, what you're doing, it's good to get a different perspective on on football and athletes, and the things you go through and the ups and downs. And like you said, generally we do interviews, and it's just like, how you doing? What's going on the weekend? And how's your training going? But this is the nitty and gritty, and the real world and the real truth about it. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's good to come on and obviously express myself, and it's been a pleasure, mate.
Awesome. James Troisi, you're a superstar.
All right, take care.
Thanks, brother.